Hello and welcome. I hope you had a wonderful day. For today's video, I have 5 fun Halloween DIYs to share with you. I have more Halloween DIYs coming up real soon, and I hope you stick around for those. DIY number 1, I have skewers from Dollar Tree, a frame with wooden beads from Dollar Tree, a Halloween card with a cute black cat from Dollar Tree, fabric with pumpkins on it. This is from Walmart, and tiny pumpkins I found at Goodwill, and I have no idea where they originally came from, but I'm sure you know where to find little pumpkins. I know you know. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the frame and paint it black. The thing about this frame is when you paint it, the paint does this cracking thing, and I thought that was kind of cool. I liked that, so I just let it do its thing. So if you want the same effect, I would suggest to try to find the same frame that I used. So this is what I used, and hopefully you get the same effect if that's what you wanted to go for. Next, I painted the beads, but I purposely made them look unfinished painted because I wanted them to go with the frame. Now I'm going to measure and cut the card so it can fit into the frame. Dollar Tree has a lot of options when it comes to Halloween cards, so if you can't find the black cat, they have other cute ones there too. Next, I'm going to use Mod Podge and cover the entire inside, and then place that cute black cat inside. A glue stick would work just fine also. To protect the paint on the frame, I covered it with Mod Podge. Since the paint looked like it will probably chip off in time since it did this cracking thing. If you wanted to, you can just stop right there and it looks really cute just like this, but I had an image in my head, so I wanted to see it through. So I'm going to take one skewer and measure it to the frame, making sure it's a little longer than the frame. Now I didn't want this to be the exact same size as the frame, and you'll see why later on. So now I'm going to paint the skewer black. While that's drying, I'm going to take my fabric and measure it to the frame. I'm going to measure and cut to the size that I want. I'll be making curtains with this, so I really want it to cut in the center so it looks like 2 curtain panels. I guess the trickiest part to this DIY was hot gluing the skewer to the fabric because I wanted it to look like actual curtains, and I had to hot glue it a certain way so it had that curtain kind of crease to it. And then I just hot glued my curtains onto the frame. I held it down for just a little while so it wouldn't pop off right away, and it held on pretty strong. I wanted to add some style to my curtain rods, so I took 2 wooden beads that I grabbed from my stash of wooden beads that I got from Amazon, and I painted those black, and then I hot glued them to each end. For the pumpkins, I just cut off all the stuff that was on top of them, and then I hot glued them to the top of the frame. The last thing I did was cut a little more fabric to wrap around the curtains, and then I hot glued the curtains to the frame. So this is how it looks if it's hanging. I think it looks really cute. Let me know what you think. And then this is how it looks when it's not hanging and the beads kind of fall to the back. And I think it looks super cute like this too. So either way. DIY number 2 is something that you may have seen people do already. It's taking these plastic creatures from the Dollar Tree and spray painting them. For these ones, I wanted to spray paint one black and one gold, and I just realized that the bird one is just staring at me right now. He's like, "What are you gonna do with those spray paints, lady?" Okay, sorry. So moving on. So I'm going to take these foam, circle foam craft thingies from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take this non-slip mesh thing. It's a non-slip stuff. I don't know what they're called, but you can find them at the Dollar Tree. And then I'm going to measure the non-slip thing with the foam thing, and I'm going to cut around it. I'm sorry. I'm doing really bad with like describing what I'm doing, but I don't know why. Anyways, so I'm just gonna measure that with that, and then okay. Sorry about that. I guess you can say I had bird brain. Well, I guess I shouldn't wing the voiceover. Okay, I'm back. I had to write everything down because my brain likes to go off on tangents. So if you're still there, thank you. Thank you very much for still being there. For this project, I really wanted my creatures to be on a base. Now, if you wanted to put them on a wooden base, that would look really nice, but I wanted them to be uniquely me, which is why I'm making my base this way, and the different textures really made it look more Halloween to me. So these are my colors. I'm going to paint one brown and I'm going to paint the other one black. So I had to paint this a certain way. I had to dab it on instead of regular brush strokes. This made it easier to get the color through the non-slip stuff and onto the foam, and it looked a lot cooler too. This is how they turn out once I was done painting them. Now I'm going to hot glue my creatures onto my bases. If you wanted to, you can just leave them like this, and I think they look really nice like this, but I had a vision in mind, so I kept going. Starting with the bird, I wanted it to look like it was sitting on a nest, so I hot glued some Spanish moss onto the base. And this is something that I found at the Dollar Tree. It's not always there all the time, but I also thought it would look cool too if I can find some twigs and maybe hot glue twigs on, but I couldn't find twigs at the time. But this is, you get the point, you get the idea. Now for the unicorn, I'm using black rocks that I found at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to hot glue those onto my base. And this is all I did for my creatures, and then I was done. And I really love how these came out. They're really cool looking, and I think they're pretty. I hope you like them too. For DIY number 3, I have some cardboard. I have those little pumpkins again. I have scrap wood, metal words from the Dollar Tree, one of Dollar Tree's haunted houses, those wood piece haunted houses. I have floral moss from the Dollar Tree, and I have a battery powder, the battery powered pumpkin lights from the Dollar Tree. The first thing I did was paint the house black. Now you can just leave the house black and the outcome will still be really nice. I had a particular vision for this, so I wanted to add more color like brown and white, and I did a lot of dry brushing and blending until I was happy with the results. I forgot to film it, but I did end up switching to a dry sponge brush to help me do the blending. I'm taking a piece of cardboard and I'm splitting it apart in order to get to that bumpy part that's in the center of the cardboard. I'm all about different textures, and I really wanted the roof to be a different texture as if it was actual shingles. So what I'm doing right now is just measuring the shape that I want my shingles. So I'm using the pen and I'm just measuring where I want to make my cuts. When it came to the middle roof, the center roof, I still wanted that window. So I had to cut my piece in half, and then I had to cut half circles on both of them. So if that makes any sense, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing. It didn't measure up right, and like it looked really janky, so I had to make a small triangle piece to cover it up. And I think by doing that, it gave it more dimension, and I think it looked a lot cooler that way. So it worked out at the end. Then I just painted my rooftops black, and I added a little brown. And this is one of my sons. He wanted to help paint the rooftop for me. Next step was painting the base, and my sons wanted to help with that. Both my sons. To glue it on, I used 4 Jenga blocks. They came in a pack of Jenga blocks. You can find them at the Dollar Tree in the kids section. So I hot glued 2 on one side and 2 on the other side, and I just hot glued them to the house. Now it's time to decorate, and I first started off by hot gluing some moss. And then I hot glued those small pumpkins, but first I took off all those top pieces. I did put a little bit of black paint on those pumpkins just because I wanted them to look more decayish. I thought they were too orange, and it kind of threw the whole thing off. Now I hot glued one of those metal signs that came in a pack of 3, and I picked the one that said haunted. The last thing I did was tape the lights to the back, and I wanted some of the pumpkins to be peeking through the window, which is why I taped them this way. And this is the outcome to all that, and my family really loved it. So this is how it looks during the day. And this is how it looks at night. So DIY number 4 is a no glue needed project. So all these items I got from the Dollar Tree, and you do not need any glue for this one. The wreath is one of the smaller ones, and it comes in a 2-pack. I wanted the ribbons to have a ducktail at the end, and I did some folding and cutting in order to do that. Now for the ribbon and all the other pieces, I did cut them into equal lengths. So the ribbon, I believe I cut them into 7 inches in length, and for the rest of the pieces, I cut them in 6 inches in length. And I wanted to do that just so there's an equal amount of them and I don't run out of anything. The pipe cleaners I had to cut in half because they were a little too long for this. Now I'm going to put all my pieces together and wrap the pipe cleaner around them. Now I'm going to take my ribbon and my pipe cleaner, and I'm going to wrap it starting from the middle part of the wreath and going to the center part. I'm going to keep making more of these, but I'm not going to fill the wreath with them because I wanted this small little wreath to be unique. At this part, I'm smushing them together into 2 sections. I took my scissors and I did a little bit of trimming. I have this yarn I got from Dollar Tree last year and I'm going to use it to wrap around my wreath. So since no glue was needed, all I had to do was tie the yarn to the wreath and I would wrap it around. Now the yarn was pretty tangled up, so I did have to do some cuts here and there, and then what I did when I ran out of one piece, I would just tie on another piece and tie that piece to that piece and another piece to another piece, and it was a lot of tying and wrapping and tying and wrapping. Now I'm going to tie on the little sign that came in a pack of 2 from the Dollar Tree. I did make some cuts here and there to get rid of some of those little strands that I didn't want. The last thing I did with this was I grabbed one little ghost and I painted him white. And then I tied him to the wreath by using one of the little ties that it already came with. For this project, I'll be using one of these long skeletons that I got from the Dollar Tree. I took it all apart and I wanted to cover the holes, so I used caulking, but I recommend using spackle. I think with spackle you can sand it down and it would blend in more. With caulking you can't really do that, and so it's the only thing I had. It did work on covering the holes, but I mean it was hard to work. Then I painted the skeleton entirely black. And for this project, I'll be using 2 of Dollar Tree's canvases. They're the 8x10s. I have one of Dollar Tree's foam pumpkins that I cut in half. This is just the other half to a previous project, and I'll be using the colors orange and brown. Now I'm going to cut the skeleton. I wanted the top half separate from the bottom half. I positioned the skeleton to where I wanted it, and then I hot glued it to the canvas. I hot glued the pumpkin and I wanted it to look as if the skeleton went to a pumpkin patch and found the biggest pumpkin, and it was super happy about it. That's why it has that big smile on its face. In order to accomplish that look, I hot glued the arm to the pumpkin. I just hot glued at the hand and I hot glued at the elbow. And then I hot glued the original stem from the pumpkin. I hot glued that back on. The bottom half is going on the other canvas, and I'm going to hot glue that on. Now you can leave it like this and it looks cute, it's simple, and you could totally go for this look. I'm going to keep going by taking these mini pumpkins from the Dollar Tree and cutting them in half. I hot glued them onto the canvas. I took one skewer and I cut pieces of it so I can have some stems for these pumpkins. I think they look cool like this, but I wanted them to go with the big pumpkin, so I painted them using brown and orange acrylic paint. One of my sons wanted to help, so I let him paint the first coat of paint for the pumpkins. When he was all done and they were all dried, I then painted the second coat of paint, and before that second coat dried, I added some brown and I did a mixing and blending of the brown and the orange. And this is finished. I think this would be a fun activity to do with the kids. They can paint the pumpkins and you'll have some Halloween art that you made together and you can put it up every year. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know by giving this a thumbs up. I have more Halloween DIYs coming up. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope something good happens to you today. Bye!